We're all misfits.
All right, you ragtag bunch of misfits.
You're a scrappy little misfit, just like me.
Biggest bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into another episode of the Misfit Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about the Legends competition, Masters competition that just went down. Hunter and I traveled to Alabama for. Before we do that, you've probably noticed that all of our content recently has, well, either not existed or has been related to upcoming programming, and we haven't done any games review sort of podcast or anything like that, and that's very intentional on our end. I want to do a short form solo podcast as a bit of a tribute to Laza. He was a friend of mine. As you can probably hear right now, I'm not ready to do that yet. Basically just because I can't. Like, people have asked if I've watched the documentary, and I can't get through the first 10 seconds of it. So I'm not going to get into my opinions on the situation, both for reasons that I just mentioned, just in terms of regulating my emotions and being able to get through it. And then, there's a piece of me that definitely wants to, after talking with a lot of athletes, be part of the solution instead of entering the echo chamber and yelling a bunch of stuff out into the abyss. I'm very close to the situation. As I said, he was a friend. So I'm not seeing it through, I don't think, the same lens as a lot of other people are. But I don't think that we should move forward and talk about the things that we're going to talk about without addressing that. And probably a good segue into why we're doing this podcast and why I went is because of the athletes very specifically. I didn't think that our athletes, and again, this is just my personal opinion, if you didn't go because you didn't think you could do it, or you thought that it was a, sort of a show of standing up against something that happened, that's your right to do. But I just felt like the athletes were the ones who were going to pay the most for me not being there. And this podcast is actually because people came up to us all weekend and were like, what do you think of the events? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? You guys gonna do a podcast? You going to do a podcast? You're going to like break all this down? So the bright spot of CrossFit in the community right now is the athletes. The progression of the athletes is so absurd. The level of competition that we just witnessed at a Masters competition was absolutely incredible. And we'll get into a whole host of things related to this competition, but just this year, I think a lot of you probably heard me talk about how the East semifinal was like the best competition that I've ever been to, top to bottom, in terms of how competitive the athletes were. Man, I had a lot of similar feelings this weekend at the Masters. Just like you have the divisions that are broken up by these 5-year segments, and you walk out to, the deadlift run workout, for example, and you're 2 divisions away from, in the older direction, and you're seeing times at the same weights that would have like won or been in the top 10 2 divisions lower, which is just sort of incredible to see. So I want to highlight the athletes, and I want to begin that by saying our 10th ever age group podium was the first ever games champion, Justin LaSala. Yeah. And Justin LaSala is like an old school, salt of the earth, like kind of guy. And the way that he executed out there, you could tell that he'd been doing it for a while and that he was very ready for that moment. We got a kind of a front row seat to his final event there, where he was tied for second. And his execution was like, his time looked blistering, but he knew what he was doing in terms of, he was very thoughtful with the way that he broke up the workout, with the way that he kept his eye on the other athletes, which spoiler alert, was basically impossible all weekend long. We'll get there. We'll get there. So I really wanted to start just by congratulating Justin. It's, we've been doing this for 14 years, and we've had, like I said, 9 podiums before that in the age group, and we've had team podiums. We've had so many athletes do so many incredible things, but the very first ever Misfit Athletics CrossFit Games champion is Justin LaSala, and that's pretty fucking awesome.
Fuck yeah.
So great. Yeah.
Yeah.
He hammered it all weekend. That was super fun to watch. I didn't catch as many of the events as I would have liked. Saw him hit a couple events. But to see him come out in that final event where effectively, like, if you didn't know what the leaderboard looked like, the top 3 were already set. The 4th place was more than 100 points out, so even an event win and a complete tank by the top 3 would not have moved them off of the podium. So all 3 of them were just scrapping for essentially 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And honestly, it looked like Justin was doing a different workout than everybody else, especially on the pull-up bar. So it was really fucking cool.
He smashed
to see
most
him.
of the guys in the younger division too. They did the same workout after.
I
And
mean,
was
he
like, Justin.
he went up. His bar muscle ups looked excellent, and the strategy component was there. Just a well-deserved 1st place finish for Justin for sure.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Kenzie Riley, Kelly, the artist formerly known as Kelly Clark, which it said on her thing and confused everybody. Mike Kern and Jesse Williams. Jesse Williams is our affiliate owner and coach that follows our Misfit affiliate programming that kind of qualified by accident and then ended up being the 26th fittest person in the world in his age group, which is just so fucking cool. And you could tell that he really kind of leaned into the moment and, took it all in this weekend and enjoyed himself, which was nice to hear. That was his first CrossFit competition.
Really?
Yeah. Fuck, that was incredible.
Whoa.
Yeah. That was his first CrossFit competition. So we are essentially going to do typically what we do with CrossFit competitions, where we break down time domains, stimulus, movements, a bunch of stuff related to that, and probably some other comments. This is tough because most of the stuff that we're going to say after what I'm about to say right now is going to seem very negative, and I just want to throw it out there that, like that hater mentality, like being on the negative side of things is annoying and kind of sucks, and it's not what we're after here. And it's also really fucking hard to run a competition. And these guys, they took 1 trillion athletes and dropped them on these gentlemen that run the Legends. And they actually have, and a really important note here, they have a very good reputation with the Masters athletes. Like the Masters athletes really like those guys. So they've built up some goodwill over the years, I think. And anything that we say in this is to give athletes information and maybe throw some stuff out there that could be better moving forward. So I got to put that out there, because a lot of what we have to say is like, well, we wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't have done that. And, we get to say that from our leather office chairs while not running a competition. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the
jump in.
Yeah, I mean, you might be friendlier than I might, and I'll definitely try to restrain myself in a
Who would have guessed that?
in a productive manner. But the reason for that is that ultimately, like, from my vantage point, the Masters and teens right now are in a way fighting for their lives as far as the future in competitive CrossFit, period. And to have an event where for the first time they're on their own, separated from the larger show of the CrossFit Games and the individuals, there's a lot of pressure there. There's also going to be a whole shitload of things that we are not privy to from a logistical standpoint, a financial support standpoint, a venue selection standpoint. So we have to remember that anytime that you organize a competition, I mean, if you've done this at your local affiliate, you expand that out 100x. there are a lot of considerations that nobody will ever have any idea of unless you are in that small kind of organizational team. So again, yeah, they're like, we've got a lot of thoughts and things that I think that didn't need to happen or that could have happened to make the entire thing better that weren't necessarily constrained by the things that we're talking about. But it is really important. Like you said, it's really fucking hard to run a competition, to run at the level. And when you're comparing it to, you know, the last decade of CrossFit competition that we have to compare it to, that's a difficult kind of set of shoes to fill. So like, you know, like we said, there's a whole shitload of considerations that like even we aren't going to be privy to. And, you know, we kind of have to, so everything, you know, that follows is, you know, take it with a grain of salt, because it is really easy to say that sucked or that could have been done better when it's like, well, we did the best with what we had and you just didn't know what we had to work with.
Before we move on, Ted, I sent you some very, very serious documents.
Yes.
That we need to go over here real quick before getting started.
All right.
If you're watching on YouTube, we've got something for you, and then I'll explain along. Maybe Hunter will. We'll see.
Do I know what this is?
You're about to.
Give me just once at the format of photo that you sent.
You gotta like screenshot.
I just need to make it a JPEG here. All right.
Oh yeah, those damn .heic photos.
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
High efficiency something.
Internet cloud.
All right, it's not going to let
Fucking
me do it,
least
so I'm just going to
efficient
need
thing
to
ever. You
share
have
my
to turn
screen.
it into a different file format.
All right, here's the first one.
All right, Hunter, would you like to
God
explain?
What are we looking at here?
So we're gonna have a bunch of new listeners to this because of the content, but if you don't listen to this podcast, Hunter's life chat is almost always about his golf and how amazing his handicap is. And we went to Topgolf, and it turns out Hunter can't hit a golf ball.
Wow.
Hunter is
Hunter
0-3.
Hunter can't skitter a golf ball along the virtual screen that accumulates points based on how much the ball rolls.
Sounds like an accuracy issue.
Well,
yeah.
well, actually, so if we look at this here, this game
forgot
that
about
Hunter
this.
chose was the top drive. I believe I was close to 6 for 6 for blasting it into the back of the net, which is why I won. It wasn't skipping around on anything. The only asterisk that would be in there is they invented a club that doesn't even exist that allows people who can't golf to golf. It's basically this huge driver with a short shaft, and it's got an angle like an iron.
Yeah, it looked more like an angled croquet mallet than a fucking golf club.
And it turns out I can hit that baby 152 miles an hour and 240 yards. The 240 is not that impressive, but those balls, those aren't normal.
Those balls
We don't
are
even
not
need to
built,
show-
not built to fly or spin
No, we don't
correctly.
need to show the other one. Oh, I mean, I guess we can't. Yeah, this one was interesting because Hunter lost to everyone in this
Yeah,
one.
is that last place?
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. This
What
is my
are-
first
So
top
good.
golf experience too. Like
He
learning that,
chose. He tried to cheat the system by choosing one round of it was literally Angry Birds, where you hit the ball and the ball became the bird shooting at the structure.
Yeah.
And that also wasn't going well, so he quit the game while we were playing it.
Oh,
He
we
fucking
played a full
unplugged-
round of it.
No. We haven't finished yet. You unplugged the fucking video game system when you were down.
So is there like a virtual screen of birds that you're aiming for?
Yeah,
What you're looking at is the TV screen. Behind you is like the bay, and you hit
And they'll
like
show
outward.
you like the yellow circle with the flag out there is where you're trying to hit it, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hunter.
So
I have to second guess all
Hunter,
of
you better
these.
practice, because who knows when the next training camp's going to be with a Top Golf. You better get your shit together, pal. All right. Let's get started on
tough
the
look.
Masters review. I gotta bring it up. I gotta do it. They did the briefing the night before at 8:30 p.m. for 70-year-olds.
What's wrong with that?
So I'll just throw that out there. And they weren't ready for the briefing. And instead of having just kind of the humility that you would have in moments where you're not prepared or you need to get someone an answer to a question that you don't have, they were pretty rude. The head judge and one of the people that runs the competition were basically like yelling or trying to turn it into a joke. It was
an
a
extraordinarily
bad start. It was a bad start.
Very, very tough look. Some not having any equipment set up for the briefing of the flow of the workout.
One of 10 events.
Not
like, just
actually,
imagine these things existing.
Not actually demonstrating movements, and also the way that it was briefed. At least a couple events did not. So the athlete pack that was sent out, the quote flow, was essentially do the movement,
run,
go to the next movement,
deadlift,
do the next movement, go to the next. So there was entirely no detail in exactly how the flow worked, and during the briefing, that was not clarified. And when clarifying questions were asked, maybe the most patronizing and like sarcastic, kind of rude responses to athletes were given. And by like 15 minutes left in the brief, there were probably like 10% of the initial, athlete. Everyone left.
They like walked out.
Everyone
of the
left. They were like, "This is fucking. This
bad.
Is dumb. I'm annoyed. I guess we'll." And ultimately it was like, "Oh, you're gonna get briefed by this in your corral right before you go out on the floor," which in theory sounds nice, except for the fact that not a single volunteer judge is one at this athlete briefing, nor are they in the corral with the athletes to hear what is being communicated with them. And that's something I've always had an issue with at CrossFit events, is like why the volunteer judges are not at every single athlete briefing. So I feel like sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But if there's to be any consistency between the standards that are briefed to the athletes and what a volunteer judge is going to uphold on the floor, like, why the fuck are judges not in those briefings and hearing the questions and hearing the answers to the questions? It blows my mind.
Luckily, the following day, things were a little better. The actual competition day. Like getting there, things felt somewhat normal. The warm-up area wasn't big enough to have coaches and athletes, so it was weird for us being like on the other side of the fence to talk to our athletes. I understand why they did it. I know some coaches don't mind being in the way of other athletes and things of that nature. And there were hundreds of coaches there.
Yeah, I also remember there were over 400 athletes across all of these divisions, and you attach a coach to each of those. Like,
yeah,
there's got to be a little bit of
right.
And I didn't have an issue with that. I had a bigger issue with the general lack of equipment for the elite athletes to actually warm up on. But
yeah. All right. So the first event for most of the divisions was the second worst event of the weekend.
From a difficulty or programming perspective?
Programming perspective.
Okay. This was also event 3 for a lot of the divisions that
so it
went first.
It was, 25 overhead squats, 80-foot lunge, 25 overhead squats. And I don't believe in taking away someone's podium, so I won't use names, but one of our athletes, because of the briefing stuff, lost their spot on the podium due to this event. Now, they had 9 more events, and again, I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, but they basically, you overhead squat in your lunge lane, and if they, I guess, didn't like how much room you left yourself, they made you run back in a 2-minute workout to move your barbell, which everyone's time was between like 155 and like 205, everyone. So essentially you lost the workout if they made you go back and slide your barbell backwards. they just putting your judges in the position of trying to judge basically fucking air squats, and then making the athletes turn around every 20 feet on their lunges. So athletes were getting dinged on like spinning without extending their hips.
Yeah.
Like they wanted you to stand, then turn. And it's like in events like that, blurring the lines is like part of what happens. So I think in theory, a little bit of a burner. I'll give them credit for the stimulus affected the run deadlift for sure. Like the athletes doing 50 like squats that fast with the lunges, but the workout should have been spread out in a different way. There would have been multiple ways to make this workout better. But like you just looked across, you could see 10 of the 20 people going, depending on what side you were standing on. And like, I don't know, half of them were doing good reps, somewhere in that range. And then a lot of the athletes doing good reps were getting no reps. So it was like,
For me, this kind of encapsulated the weekend in the sense that like, so credit where credit's due. It was a good workout. The stimulus was like really fucked up athletes. And because it's such a short, and this is kind of like, it actually was supposed to be the third workout, but I think it's cool to have like that first workout. Athletes have kind of that, pre-competition jitters, and it's kind of nice, at least for the athlete, to have a workout where it's like, you have to go full send on this, like let the adrenaline run rampant and get after it. The problem is that like, this is a fucking judging nightmare. And this is an issue that I have with the programming as a whole, is that
Ted, the weight was 75-55.
It appeared to look like on paper it's a good workout, but it's like, okay, so you've got 50 light, fast squats, overhead squat, respectfully to the Masters, where depth and hip extension is something that like a lot of those athletes are fighting to begin with, but then you ask for a tremendous amount of speed. You ask for judges to be able to pay attention and make correct judgment calls in the moment. Like athletes are just rifling through these squats, and then the lunge lane being 20 feet. So like for those who don't know, they basically had 20 lanes on the competition floor, 10 on one side of the floor, 10 on the other side of the floor, and you are competing across the floor with athletes. And we can talk about that, but like your closest competitor as the competition wore on was across the floor from you. So we now have a 20-foot lane length, and basically like, so some athletes only need 6 steps, some athletes need 7 or 8 steps, and across such a short workout, like the logistics of the event became kind of a constraint as far as how fast athletes can go and how they can execute it. Anytime the programmed workout restricts the athlete's ability to display their capacity, I think is a huge fucking mistake and a problem. And I think that was like, again, really good stimulus, cool to fucking athletes set their hair on fire. Kelly was in the hurt locker after the workout, as I think was intended. It affected the rest of the weekend, which I think was kind of cool. But we set up athletes, judges, and the competition organizers set themselves up for a little bit of failure with that, like that sort of format. And again, maybe some constraints as to how much space they have. So you had to do the lanes the way that they did, but you're going to dictate a certain distance where you have to turn around every 20 feet. Again, like you said, Drew, athletes getting no rep because they're trying to turn around quickly with the dumbbells, but they're not achieving full hip extension, but it kind of doesn't matter. They're just trying to move fast. And like you get a couple of no reps there and you're going to lose multiple places. And I think that's that's so frustrating.
Yeah. And I think it's important to visualize these workouts in the correct way. So one of the things that the sport has had to do over the years is increase the like viewability and like understanding from the side of the spectators. So like you've got signs that show how much weight is being lifted, or they have the little thing where it's like they've gone 200 meters, 400 meters, 600 meters on a machine. They have pylons that you move round to round to show. To me, thinking about competitions from that standpoint is like bare minimum. Like you have to think about people showing up to watch this insane sport that we do that makes absolutely no sense to almost anyone. We're going to take it a step further. The athletes had no idea where anyone else was at in these workouts. So you used to know on the floor where certain people were, but the spectators didn't. This achieved neither. They set up 10 lanes.
I did go over that while you had to pop out, Drew.
Across from each other.
Yeah.
So it's like if you were racing, you could have been racing someone all the way on the opposite side of the floor, and then on the opposite side of like there's
Going
another
in the opposite
rig
direction
on the other side. It was basically like they took a competition floor that would be 20 athletes wide who could see each other racing just sort of vertically and chop them in half and put them together. So it'd be
Is there only
facing each
one
other.
competition floor?
Three.
Three.
were
And they were
three
all set up the same way?
They were all set up 10 and 10. Yes.
One
So
of them had a bigger rig. The other had like two across from each other, and the third was like an empty floor for. They were clearly designated for specific events, but there were 3 floors going concurrently.
shout out to the announcers. Obviously didn't listen to any of the live stream, but bless your hearts for trying to figure out what was going on those competition floors.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
just
even
like-
imagine doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Event 2, some issues with it, and we'll get to why those issues exist maybe later when we talk about the time domains. Event 1 was 2 minutes long, essentially, if we didn't already mention that. Muscle overload
3-minute cap,
stimulus.
2-minute
3-minute
workout,
cap,
basically.
yeah. Event 2, pretty good workout. 4 rounds of 600-meter run in air quotes. It was actually a 500-meter run, roughly. And ascending reps on deadlift, fairly heavy. Gas stimulus for sure. I mean, there were some athletes that struggled a little bit with the deadlift to finish the workout, but like that can also be because you're just zapped.
Definitely gas stimulus.
It's about a 12-minute workout, roughly. There were athletes in the 10s in different divisions, and there was one athlete in the women's 35 to 39 that took 14:03. That was the longest anyone worked out in that division the entire weekend. So we'll put a pin in that and kind of save it there. Good workout. Like it's running and deadlifting, right? And the speeds at which some of the athletes ran was freaking mind-blowing. And then if you could come back in and deadlift with, actually use your posterior chain and have more of the conventional style of a deadlift, then, did pretty well. And again, like I wish the run was what they said it was going to be. But that does happen somewhat regularly at competitions.
Not as concerned about, it was not a 600, not as concerned about that. It was longer. The intent, from what I heard on the Masters Chatter podcast and some of them talking about the programming, was that it was supposed to be a little bit biased toward the run, which I think they achieved. Wanted it longer than a 400, shorter than 800, which was achieved. They also wanted to run a 5K as event 1. And I think the Alabama heat became a constraining factor there. And I think, safety being top of mind, quote unquote, unclear if that was actually the case based on the athlete briefing, but we'll leave that. So I didn't have any issues with the workout, and in a vacuum, it's an excellent workout. Context of the whole weekend, if that was supposed to be the long one, hands in the air, unsure, but I didn't have any issue with that workout, and it set people up to have to really make sure their recovery was on point for the rest of the weekend as well.
For sure. Event 3, rope climb, sandbag clean, handstand walk. It's about an 8-minute workout for
you want to go over exactly the rep scheme for people?
Sure.
Just so.
Yeah, so it was 4 rounds of 4 rope climbs, 6 sandbag cleans, and 40 feet of handstand walking.
Yeah.
Definitely first and foremost, at the highest level, this was a rope climb workout. This was one of those workouts that we talk about. We've done a bunch of content recently on the fact that if you are heading into quarterfinals and you don't have these high rep rope climbs figured out, you're in trouble. This was a perfect explanation of this, because then you had to go muckle onto the sandbag and handstand walk, and you just end up right back at the rope climb. So definitely a muscle overload. So that's 2 out of 3 thus far. Muscle overload, again, 8 minutes long. In a vacuum, again, it's a good workout. Like, you could really tell that honestly, almost all of it for most athletes was a problem. Yep. Like, they didn't want to do the next thing because of the previous thing, or what had culminated to that point.
Yep, I like the fact that some rope climb efficiency was the thing. A lot of people were like, should I touch and go the sandbag clean? Should I not? And it's like, bruh, that sandbag clean's the least of your problems. Like, this is a rope climb workout. So shout out Misfit Gym Portland coaches and members for retaining the top spot as the best rope climbers in the world. Still superior to many CrossFit Games athletes, but yeah, good workout. Another muscle overloady sort of thing. Again, in a vacuum, didn't have too much of an issue with it. Just, when we think about the weekend as a whole, it's like, how well does this thing fit? It was also the first of 4 gymnastics pulling workouts. I know that's typically pretty heavy on the at the CrossFit Games, but we got rope climb, chest to bar pull up, ring muscle up, bar muscle up, all within a handful of events. So
I have my sticky note here from looking at the events right off the bat. And it says event 2, 16 rope climbs, event 6, 60 chest to bar, event 7, 30 muscle ups, event 8, 64 toe to bar, event 10, 36 bar muscle ups. It's just the very first thing that popped up in my head. Like, we've got some other options potentially here. So I would say, because we're about to go scorched earth on this next event, I will say let's call it 2 for 3, day 1. And honestly, just changing the weight, changing the distance of the lunge. There's just a couple of things that would have made that workout what they wanted it to be. It was too friendly to maybe the bottom 10 athletes in each division, and it was way too mean for their judges, for any judge,
event,
honestly.
The first one, the overhead squat lunge. Yeah, and again, like, in a vacuum, like, pretty, like, I'm fine with the workouts, 2 out of 3, and it was more of a logistical thing than like an actual issue with the movements and the reps selected. Just kind of like, how do we make sure that this is fair and that athletes are not getting constrained by the logistics and the format of the workout? Let the boys play.
All right. So they did what they claimed to be a snatch ladder. Take it easy, big. It's gonna be all right, big boy. It's gonna be okay.
I'm gonna fucking come through the screen.
All right, so let me set the stage for you. The athletes at 3, 2, 1, go in the women's 35 to 39. Some of these athletes could still come close to qualifying for the individual CrossFit Games. 4 snatches at 95 pounds. You can power snatch this. Then you slide your bar forward. You take the change weight off.
Didn't slide it forward. They had to change that, remember?
Oh, yeah.
They went to retrieve the plates in front of them.
They had to go get their plates. They had to take the change weight off. They had to put the 10s on to get them to 3 snatches at 115 pounds in this momentous snatch ladder. It's 115 pounds, 3 weights. They were in a box, and they had to make sure that this hunter, maybe mute yourself, take it easy. The change weight had to be in the box. I'm
mute myself. Ted, turn me up.
The change weights had to be in the box in front of the barbell.
Don't you fucking dare put those plates on the line, or that will be a no rep.
Kelly maybe did a snatch with the plate on the line. The judge let her do it, and then was like, "No."
I will say, caveat: the judge was trying to tell her to move the plate before she snatched. So, credit to the judge, sort of.
Then you step over this bar. You are presented with another bar that has 135 pounds on it. Maybe they're going to do Isabel. No, they're not. They're going to do 2 snatches. They are then
That's the ladies' weight. Ladies'
Yes.
third bar for 2 reps.
135 pounds. Then they remove the change weight. They put weight on. They put the change weight back on. They put their clips back on, and they snatch 1 rep at 155 pounds. Men's weights were 135, 165, 195, 225. That's what Will Murad and Bronislav Linkowitz, I don't know how to say your name, sorry, Braun, had to snatch while frantically changing. I mean, honestly, watching the athletes, like, you guys know what the rogue, the finish on those rogue change weights are. They're kind of rubbery, so if you pull at an angle at all,
The clips are the same.
The clips are
the same.
Yeah, the clips have the rubber on the inside, which is so that they don't come off. This event was a nightmare.
This was the dumbest fucking event I've ever seen at high-level CrossFit competition, period.
It was crazy. We were like, there's got to be nuance. It's got to be squat, snatch, backflip, overhead squat complex.
It's gonna be, they're gonna do a like
speed ladder rounds,
like rounds, like elimination style. When I saw the athlete pack, the first, like, when I was reading through the details, I was like, Kelly, did you see that you have to like change weights and roll the bar? We literally, for our primer day at a gym, I had her practice like, this is how I think they're going to lay them out. And we kind of worked together, and we actually ended up guessing correctly. I was like, I hope they're at least like the 10-pound, like the white Rogue 10-pound plates that are small. It's like, no, actually they're the full diameter plates that need to like come on and off the bar. And you could see, like, I was standing behind Kelly's lane. Like, as soon as I read that, I knew exactly how this workout was going to go, and it went exactly how I thought it was going to go. And you could see her hands shaking because she's got so much adrenaline. We're trying to go at these weights that are, for at least the top 35 to 39 men and women are. It's a speed ladder. Like, I'll give them that. I'll say this: if they had the 4 bars set up, and that was the format, I think I would be much less disappointed. I would probably
great.
just
I mean,
I would
that's what
just
we
say,
thought
like,
when we saw
we
it.
probably
It's like,
could have
what
been a
is
little
this?
bit heavier to make
Right.
sure that there was some differentiation. But the changing of the weights thing, I how the fuck did that get through the number of people that it needed to be like,
took them about a
good
minute.
to go.
It took them about a minute to change the weights.
Kelly did it in 45 seconds in testing with her
same
4
with Kenzie.
bars, and it was like a minute 35 with a no rep, a fully completed rep that didn't count for Kelly in this event. It was a pit crew workout. There was no, like, there were a few athletes obviously who struggled with that last bar and actually benefit from having to change the weights from a time perspective, I guess, but it was the most frustrating workout to watch in history.
Did they brief this?
Yep. So the initial plan was that the athletes were going to roll the barbell forward, at which point an athlete legitimately asked, so are you going to have me roll a bar forward? I'm now bent over changing my barbell weights while somebody in a lane directly next to me is potentially dropping a 135-pound barbell. At which point, certain event organizers said, email the head in for, like, a very, very legitimate safety concern was essentially ignored in front of the entire audience.
The person was basically made fun of, like chastised,
and
like,
made to feel like that was the dumbest question ever. And I was super close to being like, you guys just had arguably the biggest safety blunder in the sport's history. Not arguably, definitively. And that's a very legitimate question that's being asked, and you just patronized all 800 listeners to this athlete briefing. It was very, very frustrating.
So, event 4, 1 minute and 40 seconds, essentially a massive swing and a miss. I will double down on what Hunter said. If someone at CrossFit HQ looked at this and approved it, I don't understand. I would love an explanation. I mean, nothing about this workout made sense.
And I actually, one more thing. I did listen to the certain event organizers talking about it on Talking Elite Fitness, and it was like 2 bars is actually better for safety and will make for a more exciting event. Those were like, I was like,
well, they didn't tell us they didn't have any room for the competitors to compete, so maybe that's why they were saying that.
Yeah, that was a failure at basically every level, in my opinion.
Event 5. Hunter, tell me if actually, you know what? I'm just gonna fucking read these babies.
75 wall balls, 40
shoulder overhead,
shoulder to overhead,
30
step overs, 40 dumbbell snatch, 75 wall balls.
We have. What would you categorize this as gas? Correct. I mean, it's you got to be really fit for this to be muscle.
Yeah, I think I think like ultimately like athletes were strategically breaking things up and had to at some point. By our definition, they had to because but it was more of a strategic thing and
right.
I think ultimately like the limiting factor was just athletes not being able to fucking breathe, legs being toast after the step overs. But again,
this was a good workout.
I like the chipper. My constructive criticism here is more that when this event was released on the games page as well as in the athlete pack, this is a kind of one of those things, the super little things that actually make a difference. This was briefed or at least shown on a graphic as a 115/80 pound barbell for the shoulder to overhead.
There's no
and it was a double dumbbell shoulder to overhead. Presumably that's a logistical thing. I have to assume maybe it was changed. And again, even games events have been changed like day of for certain restrictions. So ultimately I don't think it made that much of a difference. The graphic also indicated or made it appear that the step over was a single dumbbell. When compared to how the graphic was presented for the lunges in the first workout, it was very clear that it was like plural 50s and 35s versus this brief, which was maybe appeared to be a single dumbbell. I think it's better that it was double. And again, maybe that's just a small thing. My brain likes to pay attention to those super small details, but, the inconsistency there, it's like athletes practice one way. The athlete pack, again, legitimate question asked in the athlete briefing, and head judge holds it up in the air saying, all of these details are in the pack. And it's like, actually, very few of these details are in the pack. But okay, we'll eliminate that. I thought it was a good workout. It sucked. It was a good chipper.
It was cool to see the way that I looked at this workout and talked Kenzie through it was on the way up, you were getting the muscle overload stimulus in a big way. You went from wall ball to the dumbbell shoulder to overhead. So arms and legs in equal measure, especially depending on how if you do a push press versus a push jerk, and then you hold on to the dumbbells and you step over the box. So very muscle overload stimulus, but everyone knows eventually those step overs become gas. That's typically what those end up being. You think that they're going to be all grip, and then they're not. You can't breathe, your legs don't work, etc. Then you go to the dumbbell snatch, which is all gas. And you have to finish with another 75 wall balls. So it's kind of that, like, there isn't always a very clear distinction of what the stimulus is. We try to categorize so that we can find the trends in the sport and then help people figure out how to execute on things that come up more often than others. And for, honestly, it's kind of tough. It's athlete dependent. Like, there was an athlete that did all 75 wall balls unbroken, and I guarantee you that was a gas tank thing. And then Kenzie was like, my arms have been chopped off. I don't know where they are. So that was a muscle overload thing for her on the wall balls. And it's just sort of athlete dependent. So 10-minute workout. Might notice a theme coming here. But 10-minute workout, good workout, really fun to watch.
This is one of those ones too where I'd be curious to know like what the testing looked like in listening to the podcast. I know that at least some of these workouts were tested, and maybe all of them were, so hopefully that's the case. But there were men who did not finish this workout and women who annihilated this. And I think that like when we're thinking
50s
like
and 50s and 35s are
50s
not
and
the same
35s are
ballgame.
not proportionally the same. Men stepping over the 24-inch box. Again, I don't have a problem with that, but it is a very different stimulus, I think, for those athletes. 10-foot target for the men, 9-foot for the women is going to impact overall timing of the workout. I know it's not super often that there are different time caps for men and women, but I think this workout could have been a candidate for that, as could have the standard, especially at the Masters level. Ultimately, like, it doesn't matter. The time cap's the time cap, and however far you get, it doesn't matter all that much. But
one cool thing, though, is the top men's and the top women's times were the same.
Oh, were they?
Yeah,
I know
so
that,
it's like
like,
the
in
peak
talking to
of, you know
Jesse,
how that
Jesse
goes.
was like, I didn't finish that workout. And it's like, it's a lot. That's quite a bit different, especially as you get a little further down the leaderboard.
Yeah.
But good chipper.
Event 6, man, this is the one, this event specifically, and we can actually even call back to event 5, is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, specifically to give the listeners context for what was achieved in this workout. So much so that I want you to really listen to what I'm saying and then go out in the gym and try this. So event 6, round AMRAP 4 minutes, AMRAP 3 minutes, AMRAP 2 minutes until you reach 105 calories on the Echo Bike for men, 80 calories on the Echo Bike for women. You're resting 1 minute between these rounds. You buy in each round with 75 double unders and 20 chest to bar, and then you do as many calories as you can. So AMRAP 4 minutes, you start, your clock is counting up to 4 minutes. You do your 75 double unders, you do 20 chest to bar pull-ups. You see how many calories you can get in that time, and then it goes to a 3 minute, and then it goes to a 2 minute. We watched
1 minute rest in between.
1 minute rest in between. We watched Kenzie Riley, Andrea Nisler, Caroline Klutz do this workout in 2 rounds, not needing to do the third round. And I really want you guys to go try. What took place. So again, context, event 5, those 3 in a long chipper without knowing where the other person was, essentially did their final wall balls within a few seconds of each other, which is incredible because you're just looking at, like, it's essentially saying this is what's possible in this workout, especially in this division. And then they did the exact same thing right after. They went into event 6 and they all finished. And it was funny because none of them thought it was possible to finish in 2 rounds. But then after round 1, when Andrea got on the bike, it was very clear that she had a goal in mind when she got on that bike.
She
was not
super impressive.
Like, who knows? There was another athlete that got 79 calories and didn't finish the buy-in in 2 minutes and stayed at 79 to finish.
Was that 79 out of 80 calories after the 3 minute window?
Which can happen if you go for it, right?
And then wasn't able to do chest to bar. I mean, kudos to her. Like, that's impressive in itself.
Yes.
But for a little bit more context, like, in order for that to have happened, they all did 20 unbroken chest to bar pull-ups, 75 unbroken double unders, and then we're biking on an Echo bike at a minimum of 70 RPMs, which
on average, yes.
On average, about 300, just south of 400 watts on an Echo bike for 2 continuous rounds, also having just done 150 wall balls, 30 box step overs, like 2 hours prior.
50 overhead squats.
50 overhead squats,
5K.
lunges, deadlifts, like
50 deadlift. Yeah.
This is probably for me. This was the best written test of the weekend, and I'll also say that I didn't think that I did when I know that they said, like, athletes can do this in 2. I'm like, I don't think they can. Like, I was
same.
I was not confident that what they said that athletes could do this in 2, they would. It was like the expression of what you said at the beginning, where it's like the level of fitness that is creeping up into, like, the Masters age divisions is ridiculous. And it was just super fucking impressive to watch. Like, I seen Kenzie hurting, but I ain't seen her hurting that bad. Andrea Nisler was a, like, absolute monster, and they both just fucking napped while the rest of the field was trying to finish their last round.
Yes, I took a picture of the 3 of them that I'll post eventually on Instagram, and they're laid out while the rest of the competition is ongoing. It was just like, and again, I want, on paper, it doesn't do any of this justice.
No.
Go do 75 double unders, 20 chest to bar pull-ups, and then as many calories as you can do in that 4-minute window. Rest a minute, do it again for 3, and see how far you can get.
Yeah, see if you
I mean,
can beat them fresh.
Two of these women are, have given birth. It's just like unbelievable.
Yeah.
That was a serious show of fitness, and it was just cool that those 3 did that back to back on those 2 events to just be like lay down the gauntlet and say this is what's possible.
Yeah.
So that's back-to-back 10-minute workouts to finish the day. We go into event 7. Hunter, what is the time domain for event 7?
It was a 12-minute cap, 10 to 12-minute time domain, roughly.
So 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes.
9.5 minutes if you're a freak, but yeah.
They did the standard. So you do Grace, then you do 30 muscle-ups for time, then you do Isabel. So it's basically 30, 30, 30, clean and jerk, muscle-up, snatch. Huge muscle overload workout. You got to play this one smart. Obviously, 30 muscle-ups across divisions at the CrossFit Games, the Masters, that's a lot of muscle-ups, especially at that point in the weekend. They'd already done the chest to bar, the rope climb, all that good stuff. In a vacuum, once again, like this is a cool workout. Like this is one of those ones where you get the test retest model in the community. They did it at the CrossFit Games. A lot of the athletes in the Masters divisions beat the athletes from just a handful of years ago when they did it at the CrossFit Games, which is cool. But we've got another 10-minute muscle overload workout in the front rack with more pulling gymnastics. So that gives you the greater context of this. The one thing that I will say when I read the thing about the rope climbs, chest to bar, muscle up, toe to bar muscle up, is I assume that was Boz, not the Legends organizers, because they go after athletes when it comes to pulling gymnastics.
Sure.
So while we may not agree with the way that they do it, that is something that we knew was coming. That is something that they've done for years.
Yep.
Every time I write mock games outline, Hunter's like, are they going to be able to move their arms? And I'm like, it's not, hey man, it ain't me. It ain't me, dog. I'm just trying to get them prepared for what they normally program. I don't have a ton to say about this one because it was muscle overload the whole time and it got spread out. There were some races with the snatch. Athletes could tell where the other person was. But if it was a...
Kinda.
Yeah.
Spectators couldn't.
No. Well, I mean, half the spectators don't even know what the fuck's going on anyways.
Right.
So that doesn't help. Anything else on that one?
No, I did make a note. It kind of started the trend of the last 4 events are essentially front rack. If you include a wall ball, I'm kind of nitpicking at that point, but yeah, I mean, good workout in a vacuum. It's okay.
Event 8, 7 to 8 minutes long, burpee, toe to bar clean. We go 8 bar facing burpees, 8 toes to bar, and 1 clean. It was 180 for the women.
255 for the men. It was the exact same barbell weight as the deadlift workout. Essentially
an EMOM challenge, 8-minute time cap on a 8-round workout. Another muscle overload workout. You go hip close. It sort of at the end came down to whether you could continue to do your burpees fast and go unbroken on your toes to bar. That's what separated the athletes there. So it was fine. I didn't have any issues with it.
I don't have any issues with it. I think one of those workouts that had it been presented maybe a little bit better could have been cooler. The time cap would have had to probably be longer to accommodate transitions, but if athletes were moving the bar down the floor, doing, maybe 2 rounds in their box, then moving the bar forward 2 rounds, but essentially after the first round, it was impossible to know where athletes were. And in a multi-round workout, passing that 5-round range where it's like, are they on round 6 or 7? Are they close to finishing, or do they still have one more round to go? It's just the visual component made it difficult to follow, and for the athletes too. If you're trying to race one again, your next closest competitor to you is across the floor, and even if at some point you're racing next to somebody, it's possible that one of you laps the other, and it's like we're on the same movement, but we're on a different round, so we're not racing.
That happened multiple times when I thought athletes were tied.
Yeah,
And they had
I mean,
a whole other
I was
round of
like,
the
what
workout.
round is she on? Like, I'm
The other thing here that is a little bit nuanced and is typically, more for the person in first place or the person running in the lead of a workout is you have an advantage if you're in first place, and you should be, because you drag athletes along and you pull them into a pace that they should not be attempting to hold.
Yeah.
And can end up sending them way down the leaderboard.
Sure.
So like they used to talk about Fraser would run while Vellner was in view as hard as he could, and then when he would do a sharp left turn, he would like basically not go down to a walk, but like dial it way back.
Or you could
just
do
to
the
show
Froning and almost like draft behind the leader a little
Exactly.
bit, and
Right. Yeah. So
spring
those are
ahead when you're
are
ready.
important elements of the sport that were potentially taken away. The final workout of day 3 was a 1 rep max front squat, 5-minute window. It's a cool lift. I like lifting events. I honestly liked the short window. The only issue that I had with this workout was that no one knew how much anyone was lifting unless an announcer went and asked the judge, and then they announced it. But you couldn't change weights and talk to your coach and do all of that, and you could hear that someone was attempting a weight, but you didn't know who that athlete was or anything like that. So it's just like in the crowd should know. Like those volleyball scoring or basketball scoring things, I mean, I feel like you could probably get those at Walmart for like $5.
Yeah.
And there's so much downtime for the judge in a workout like that. Like,
so Kenzie was, so you and I were on opposite sides of the
Correct.
floor. Was Kenzie facing away from you or toward you?
no, toward me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like
The athletes were facing
I couldn't
away from
remember.
one another.
Yeah. Again, so this is 20 lanes, 10 of them on each half of the floor. So there's 10 racks on one side, 10 racks on the other, and athletes are squatting facing away from each other. I think my only comments on it is it sounds like the lift was programmed because the competition organizers, quote, like the front squat. A lot of affiliate athletes really like 30-minute EMOMs and hero workouts, but we don't program every day because that's not necessarily fitness. I'm fine. Like ultimately, it's a 1 rep max lift. Like it did what it was supposed to. The not being able to see the weights was kind of shitty. One thing that was also a little bit odd to me, and maybe it's a safety thing, is that athletes, if they failed a rep, they needed to completely unload the barbell to an empty bar and then reload it, which in a 5-minute window is like actually a really big time suck. And to me, it's like what's the problem with the women stripping down to 125 or a 215 bar? Like, let them power clean it. Who could let them waste the energy on picking a heavy barbell up off the floor? Like, is the point to find a 1 rep max, or is the point to like? It's just like little things like that make you wonder, like, why Kelly got, not to go backwards here, but like Kelly got no rep on a bar facing burpee because her foot touched the barbell, but the standard was such that athletes could step over the bar. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, is there an advantage to be gained for tripping and falling on your face over the bar? Like, what's the purpose here? Is this just a holdover from the open when that was a rule? And it's like, what's the point of this? It's another one of those kind of weird rules that, like, and maybe it is a safety thing and understood, but that was a little bit confusing to me as to why that needed to happen. One more thing. The rep had to be done before the 5-minute beep. I think one of the best things that CrossFit, the Open did, and at the games is like, if it's a 1 rep max lift, or, in the Open, it's like, you have until the X minute mark to do the lift. As long as the bar is off the floor, as long as like you are supporting the barbell, if you complete the rep after the beep, like it's good. The athlete receives no benefit for holding the barbell in the front rack for an extended period of time. And it's like if an athlete's trying to race the beep and then, again, you put an unnecessary burden on the judge, like, did they stand the rep up before the 5-minute mark? Like, why? It takes an additional 5 seconds past the time cap. Like, if the athlete's under load, let them finish the rep. And if it's successful, it works. It's the same for everybody. And it eliminates some ambiguity as to whether the rep is successful or not. I'm again, small thing that I'm like, why? Where's the advantage to be gained? You're putting unnecessary pressure on the logistics, the demands of the judge, the athlete. Stop doing that.
If you're running a local competition and you want to know the how and the why of what you would do in programming a lift, there's typically a lift or something that, prioritizes strength, whether it's woven into something else. You either need to make it a priority. So you start with your template of what you're doing for the weekend, and the number one thing that you want to do is a 1 rep max squat snatch. That is completely fine, but that sets the standard. Or you're like, it matters way more to me that we get these, 1 to 7 Metcons done, and we are, making sure that there's variance, there's pushing, there's pulling, there's overhead, all these different things.
What's
and
left?
Then process of elimination leaves you with something there. So just the idea that some of these things weren't thought about in that way leaves a little bit to be desired. But once again, in a vacuum, 5 minutes to find a 1 rep max front squat. I love the front squat versus the back squat. I love, forcing athletes to get into a better position.
Yep.
Cool lift.
Also, last thing, that heavy clean in the workout before was a squat clean for a lot of people. So again, kind of like possibly unnecessary redundancy across the programming here.
Yep. Last event, they did one event on Sunday, I think for logistical reasons, about a 5-minute workout. We had
6, 12, 18.
8, 12, 16.
8, 12, 16, sorry.
Single arm dumbbell thruster and bar muscle ups. That was a 70/50 at their respective
I don't remember when. I know Justin used a 50, so I think it was probably 50 that it went to 35 and 50 pounds. But
no, I think Mike also used a 50.
Oh, did he? And maybe it was just the 35, 39.
Muscle overload stimulus. This was a bar muscle up workout for basically every athlete out there. Again, about 5 minutes long. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. The single dumbbell thruster, it's in a competition to me is like, Like, I feel like that might just be like me personally. I know that there are probably athletes that like it, but especially in the Masters, dicking around with like unilateral mobility. I don't know how you feel.
I mean,
about
you
it,
could,
but kind of a
I mean,
throwaway
like
movement to me.
I saw Mike get no repped, and it's like, literally depending on which side of your hips the judge is sitting on, like the side that has the dumbbell is probably going to go lower than the side that doesn't. And it's just, again, so my opinion on that was that the event organizers needed to be out of the venue at a specific time. They made the least logistically demanding workout, or they either built the workout around a low logistical demand because ultimately they only have to clean up a handful of dumbbells in a single rig. On Sunday, they were breaking down both competition floors while the final event was happening. Again, broader kind of remark on the whole competition itself, but I don't know if there was a real big desire to do the single dumbbell thruster. They thought they were getting clever with like a unique movement, and fair enough, that's acceptable, but I don't know that it made for like a riveting final. It was however many bar muscle ups that was in the workout for time.
I'll give them credit, the people being able to do bar muscle ups versus not, sort of side by side, like Justin and Sean Ramirez.
Sure,
like
yeah.
That there was a good element there. Okay, so one lift, sort of, 5 short workouts, 4 medium workouts, 0 long workouts. And important to say, 4 medium workouts is kind of too much credit. If you were really fit, the longest that you worked out this weekend was 10 minutes. Every workout was 11 or less for the fittest athletes there. At this level, that's just not okay. We can, we'll get into the stimulus in a second, and I have opinions there, but there's no need to do 10 events if every single one of them is 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Like the total volume, the amount of time they're working out, like you could have gotten away with getting rid of 2 of these events and making 2 of them long. So if it was a timing thing, then I'm just not really buying that. Like a lot of times at the previous Masters competitions, it would be 2 events, then 3, then 2 events, then 3. That's how they work that in. So I don't think that's an excuse there. I mean, Hunter, you can. I'll pull up
event organizers, again, in what I was listening to on one of the podcasts was that they actually wanted to do a 5K run as the first event. Whether, again, likely has something to do with the heat, safety concerns, although they were talking about, they had been scoping out the events and like planning since February, which to me is like there's more than enough time, obviously, to replace what would be considered a quote long duration monostructural event with just something else. It's just, yeah. And again, my CrossFit methodology hat goes on here and says like keep workouts short and intense. The theoretical template for how CrossFit programs is there are far fewer long workouts. It's not like there's going to be an even number of short, medium, and long workouts. We are definitely,
which is fine because a long workout is twice as much as a short one. That's
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and like again, if there was a greater variance in the stimuli that we saw over the weekend, that might be different. But there's just too much redundancy to also omit like an important aspect of fitness in that longer kind of time domain. And this is one of those things where it's like maybe it's a constraint of the venue, of the logistics, of like we learned over the weekend that Birmingham is not exactly the safest city in the country, and maybe there's an element there of like sending athletes, like I don't know, but to me it's like the broader issue that I have is that if the goal is for this sport at this level for these athletes to continue, I don't know that we hit the mark this year from a programming perspective. Certainly not from a programming perspective as far as how well the event was run. We'll wrap up with more of that stuff if you want to touch more on programming specifically, but
yeah,
we missed
37% of workouts that the Masters normally face are longer than every workout that they did this weekend. And to me, that's just, it's a bit of a miss. We also had 2, maybe 3 gas stimulus workouts, and the rest of them were either power output or muscle overload. It's cool to see the gas stimulus more often, and then at the very highest levels that can turn into a cardio stimulus, which is your longer workouts where everything's unbroken, but it's like how fast can you go, especially if there's a monostructural element. And every single year they are asked to push a sled or pull a sled, and row and ski. That's every single year for them. So while unknown and unknowable is important, there are certain things that are just elements that are used to test different time domains, different stimuli, all these different things. But it's like every year, sled, row, ski. Almost every year, burpee box jump over, C2